So, hello and welcome to this session by a company called KidCoach. And we have an app and a podcast which inspires parents at home to develop Oracy and other skills that are essential in children, all in the comfort of their own home. And so today I'd really love to share some examples of what we do. And just to say up front that this session will contain some real clips of kids talking to make everything super practical and put some nice meat on the bone. So, let's get started, shall we? First thing to say is that it's great to be here. My name is Kevin Wather. I'm a dad of two young kids. You can see our little family pic here on the left-hand side. This was a few years ago when my youngest was 1. I come from a family of teachers, I suppose. My mum's a teacher and my sister's a teacher. I'm also a governor at a local primary school. I really love all things education, and even in the corporate world, I spent over 10 years working in an education publishing company. But most recently, I've started a company called KidCoach App, where we have hundreds of guided conversations for parents to get their kids talking, thinking, and feeling, which I'll explain a little bit more about later on. But really, it's great to be here. It's an absolute honor and a privilege. And thank you very much for tuning in to this session. So what are we going to cover? Well, 3 things, 3 objectives. The first is to share with you a really practical way, I think, that parents can develop Oracy skills in their kids at home. And I'd also like to demonstrate how, through this process, we can develop other essential skills like resilience, critical thinking, communication, creativity, confidence, and so on. These essential skills or soft skills or 21st century skills, as they're sometimes called. Thirdly, I'd like to explain how your school could get involved to support this approach, should this be something that resonates with you. So 3 things to watch out for in this presentation. The first, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, is that you'll hear some recordings of children talking. They're all raw, unedited, short clips, kind of in the philosophy for children style, all about inquiry-based learning. So I think that will be quite exciting. So let's watch out for that. The second thing is I'll go through a few tips and resources that are already out there that support parents and families and talking at home. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about this bottle, the simple, humble bottle. And you probably have a similar thing like this on your desk at home, and how this bottle can get kids talking in new ways. So let's watch out for that too. All right, so jumping in. 3 beliefs I want to share with you, and this is the first, okay, that I really, really believe that essential skills, softer skills, are needed for children to thrive in tomorrow's world. So let's just have a look at some quotes and data on that. The Institute for the Future a couple of years ago said that 85% of the jobs in 2030 have not even been invented yet, which is kind of a crazy stat when you think about it. Right? That the vast majority of jobs are not even conceivable of right now. And if you just look back to the recent jobs that seem to have come from nowhere, you can kind of spot this trend, professional blogging and social media influencer, even Uber drivers and contact tracers. Like, these are all jobs that didn't really exist before. Such is the pace of change in today's world that it's actually rather difficult to predict exactly what our kids will be doing. But what we know will stand them in good stead are more those transferable skills, the softer skills, the ability to communicate well with people, the ability to think creatively and on their feet, the ability to display empathy to others and resilience in themselves. These sorts of softer skills will always hold true in whatever profession our child happens to do. And by the way, the world is changing so quickly that probably their profession will be multiple professions, right, during their life. So things are changing so quickly, but it's the transferable softer skills which I think will help children be prepared and constantly relearn and reimagine themselves and thrive in a changing world. And in this world, the rise of artificial intelligence, as the Workflow report in 2019 says, that the rise of artificial intelligence makes soft skills increasingly important because they're the most difficult to automate, right? It's pretty easy to get a machine to chop up bits of metal on a factory line, or even play games of chess and Go, the Chinese game that's really complicated, but they had an algorithm that won that recently. It's much harder to get a machine to create a piece of music or paint a picture or do something far more creative. And so these softer skills will continue, I think, to be where humans generally have a point of differentiation to machines. And so I'm so keen to give our children that edge already today. And the final data point here, just the quotes from the LinkedIn CEO a few years ago saying that the biggest gap that employers see are in interpersonal skills. So, people often say it's who you know, not what you know. I think there's an element of truth in that. But I think what this quote from the LinkedIn CEO is really saying is that, people need to work well together. Obviously, it's intuitive, right? Our kids need the ability to communicate and collaborate well. And this is arguably a more important skill than certain academic or technical pieces of information that they traditionally learn. So look, essential skills are crucial for children to thrive in tomorrow's world. This is a key belief of mine. And another one is that we can build these skills. We really can build these skills quite simply at home through well-crafted questions that lead to good conversation. So what do I mean by that? Well, for those of you can see the slide at the moment, you see some examples of questions. So let's take that communication skill. How about asking a simple question like, how would you describe a car to an alien? How would you describe a car to an alien? This alien has never seen a car before. You know what a car is, very much so, but how would you describe it? It's a test, I think, of conciseness and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and communicating this concept of a car. What does it look like? What does it sound like? How does it make you feel if you're driving it? What are the alternatives to cars and so on? Or what about on debating? Debating is a great skill to get kids to listen to arguments and come up with counter arguments and also think critically while communicating on their feet. There is lots of fantastic debate topics that children revel in. And this one is, should children be allowed to set their own bedtimes? Should children be allowed to set their own bedtimes? And of course, every child has a very firm view on this one, as it makes for a good debate topic. Or how about the one on philosophy? If you could always be happy, would you choose to be so? There's some evidence showing that philosophy for children does support some learning outcomes, and the sort of inquiry-based learning in philosophy-based questions like this, I think really help with that. If you could always be happy, would you choose to be so? I think help them thinking through the pros and the cons of being happy, the conditions that you might want to put on that. Does the sweet taste the sweet without experience the bitter? These kinds of contemplations. And there are some other examples for those of you can see that the screen. But what I've been doing is I've been asking children lots of these types of questions across multiple skill areas: communication, creativity, philosophy, empathy, confidence, resilience, critical thinking, leadership, and so on. And I've seen firsthand how it makes a difference. And again, we'll hear some real clips from me talking to children about these questions in a moment. The third belief I just want to mention quickly is that I think parents are incredibly well placed to have these kinds of conversations at home and supplement the learning that can happen in the school environment. And the reason I say this is because parents are incredibly powerful coaches. When you think about it, we parents, we spend a lot of time with our kids, don't we, at home? More so than usual recently, of course, but even generally in a normal school year when school is up and running, a child spends up to 80% of their time at home. You think about how long the holidays and evenings and weekends are. And of course, parents can personalize their approach to their child. They have an incredibly small class size, right, of just 1 or 2 or 3 kids. I'm sure a lot of teachers out there would love small classes like that. And traditionally, parents have really good relationships with their children as well. And as we know, a good relationship and good rapport is conducive to good learning. So parents are really incredible, powerful coaches and can supplement well, I think, the learning that can happen in schools. And as we've been working with Professor Neil Mercer a little bit, the director of Oracy at the University of Cambridge, that's something that he's really sort of emphasized to me. And you can see that in this quote here of his, I think it's great that KidCoach is helping parents engage their children in learning conversations in ways that should complement the learning experiences children have in school. So 3 of my beliefs. However, parents struggle with 2 things. Yeah. In speaking to lots of different parents through the work at KidCoach, there are 2 things that parents really struggle with. The first is just the inspiration on, well, which conversations shall I have? Which are the best to have for my child at this particular moment, at the end of a busy day when everybody's a bit tired and you want to have a 5-minute chat that is meaningful. It can sometimes be hard to find the energy and the inspiration. But the second one is the guidance on, well, how to take the conversation deeper. You know, there are lots of sort of nice one-liner questions out there, and I even showed you some on the other slide. But how do you actually take that deeper to have a meaningful conversation where the learning is really sticky? And it's actually on that second point that I'd like to start the meat of this particular presentation, and mention some various talking tips that already exist for parents out there, and then share with you some insights I've had on talking tips from this podcast I've created recently, which is where you'll hear some clips of children talking. So to start with, from our hosts here, Voice 21, they have some great talking tips. I've just sort of pasted in this graphic that Voice 21 have come up with, the different talking roles that anybody can have. And this is mainly for the classroom, helping children think about different roles, but I think some of it also applies to parents at home. So the roles are around instigator, the person who starts the discussion; builder, somebody who develops, adds, or runs with an idea; challenger, somebody who disagrees or presents in an alternative argument; a clarifier, somebody who makes things clearer and simplifies ideas; a prober, somebody who digs deeper and into the argument, asking for evidence, justification; and a summarizer, somebody who reflects on the discussion and offers a balanced conclusion. Now, some of these roles I think work particularly well for parents at home. So I have called out here the builder, because generally, by the way, parents have an awful lot of context, don't they, that they can weave into a discussion. They know their child really well. They've had shared experiences, shared trips, shared holidays, things they've said over the dinner table from the other day they can bring back in, and so on. So I think parents can be really good builders, because they could say, yeah, you know, just like last week when you were, whatever it might be, or a challenger. And sometimes parents may be a little bit afraid to challenge too much, but I think a healthy amount of pushback is actually really good in terms of character building, because you know, as a challenger, a parent can say, you know, are you sure? Because, you know, I remember a bit differently last time this happened. And or perhaps a clarifier, because they know their child well, and they could say, well, normally when you say that, you actually mean this, and is that true over here, or what's going on? So these talking roles from Voice 21, I really think there's some elements of this that can be picked out for parents at home, and there's some great tips there from Voice 21, and also from Oracy Cambridge. So there's an awful lot that the Hughes Hall Centre for Effective Spoken Communication does, that's led by Neil Mercer in Cambridge. And this graphic, albeit a bit small on my screen here, is from Twitter recently, where they're working with a linguist. And I've just picked out sort of 3 things that I think particularly work well for parents, which are to pause, to join in, and to open up. So by pause, I mean pausing and giving some space and time for the child to think. You know, it's very tempting for all adults, isn't it, to fill silence with thoughts or questions, but children in particular need more time to process their thoughts and not hurry it, thinking they've only got a short window, but to really pause and let a child think, and also to join in. You know, kids get very involved and passionate about whatever they happen to be doing or talking about, and so joining in that conversation, even if it's not quite what you want to talk about, or if you think it's slightly silly, like just join in for a little bit, and then slowly move that conversation along to where you think you can have more learning and value. And to open up, you know, so to ask more open-ended questions, more sort of how would you and why would you, and rather than closed questions like what's, you know, what's tend to be a little bit more closed. And again, this can be sometimes a slightly difficult or unusual for parents because we're so used to having the right answer at school. In maths, 2 + 2 = 4. There's only one right answer, and the tendency is to close down and converge on that. But actually, in these kinds of learning conversations that develop oracy and these other essential skills, it's more about open-ended, divergent thinking questions, which is just a new modality to experience. So there's already great stuff from Voice 21 and Oracy Cambridge and multiple other organizations out there. But something I really wanted to share with you today was some additional talking tips from a podcast I've created called KidCoach Conversations. And you can get this podcast, by the way, on your usual podcast players, wherever you get them, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. And you can see that we've got quite a few episodes already published, where each episode is actually very short, 10 or 15 minutes long. And it's me talking to a child, asking them a question from the KidCoach app. Some questions that I've shown you already, and we'll hear some clips in just a moment. But as I did this, which by the way was a brilliant experience over the summer holidays, I guess I picked up on some additional talking tips for parents, some really practical, real life tips, just from having so many of these conversations. And I've summarized them here. So the three are, number one, to have some prompting questions up your sleeve to keep the conversation going. Number two, to keep asking why or what else, and give kids time and space to come up with some more thoughts. And number three, to make it a conversation. There is no right answer after all. Trying to strike that balance between validating what they're saying, but also pushing the conversation along. So I'll talk more about each of these three in a moment, but let's really illustrate them each, right? So on that first one, have some prompting questions up your sleeve to keep the conversation going. So the way we'll illustrate that is through this conversation with a 9-year-old called Bobby. And with Bobby, I was asking him this confidence-based question, which was, what do you find easy that was once hard? What do you find easy that was once hard? And we'll join the conversation sort of halfway through. So what Bobby has already told me at this point is that he used to find maths a bit difficult and timetables in specific, but now he's got better at it. So it was hard, but it's now easy. He's got more confidence doing it. But where we'll join the conversation is me asking him, well, what mindset helped you overcome that? Which is a prompting question that I already had up my sleeve. And for the audience, hope this audio works. Apologies if it's a bit scratchy, but I think you should be able to hear it. So here we go. I guess what I want you to think about is what mindset. I'll put the volume up there. Let's try again. Should just be coming now. I guess what I want you to think about is what mindset was the most helpful in overcoming the difficulty of the timetables. What kind of state of mind did you have in order to sort of keep going and learn some of those timetables?
Well, I did my tuition with my auntie, and she helped me a little bit better. And I always had help doing them. And then I kept on, they kept on moving me up onto different timetables, and I eventually got used to them, and then I got to learn really quickly.
That's great. So you got somebody to help you. Your auntie was helping with your timetable, and did you want her to help you, or did you wanted her to help you, which is great, right? Because sometimes not everybody wants help, and not everybody realizes.
So that was Bobby there talking to us about his mindset, which is all about asking for help, and his auntie helped him overcome the timetables. And we wouldn't have sort of realized that if I hadn't had that prompting question up my sleeve about what mindset were you in. So hopefully that was interesting. Similarly, on the second tip, I have another 1-minute clip. And so the second tip was around keep asking a why and what else to give kids the space and time to come up with some more thoughts. And so to illustrate here, we'll join a conversation with Millie, who's a 7-year-old. And we've been talking about empathy. And the question was, what would you say to a friend who is nervous before a party? What would you say to a friend who's nervous before a party? And you'll see in a moment, Millie displays great empathy. She gives a good answer to begin with, but by me asking sort of why and what else, and really kind of giving her that space to come up with something else, she gets to a really rather lovely idea. So let's listen in. And again, excuse the audio. It's the laptop having to kind of work double time with the speaker and also the microphone.
And I would say that it's normal to feel nervous the first few times you're going to a party, yeah?
Right, so you'd give them that empathy again of, I used to be nervous. So you could do that. I don't know, let's just say that wasn't working, right? Can we think of another approach? What else could we do to settle this person better?
Well, I would say do you want to come and play in the party games?
Hey, that's brilliant, Millie. So you would include that person in the games that you're playing, and maybe you'd help that person make some friends to feel a bit more settled. So wasn't that rather lovely, Millie coming up of inviting them to play games or share cake as a way of getting that person a bit more settled, and that came just by asking why and what else, and letting her come up with something, right? So the third example I want to share with you is around striking a balance between validating what they're saying and also pushing the conversation along, essentially really making it a conversation. And here, by the way, is where our bottle comes in, a bottle or a cup in this case, because I'm about to ask Aziza, who's 9 years old, a creativity question, which is what are 10 different things to do with a cup or a bottle or some other kind of vessel for drinking with? What are 10 different things to do with a cup? And again, we'll join the conversation about halfway through. At this point, we've exhausted the usual candidates, right? So she said to drink with, to eat with, even to pot a plant in. And the intention of this question, of course, is to like open up the thinking and see how divergent and creative we can get. But you'll see in a moment that her and I really have a back and forth conversation. The conversational turns are really quite high here. And she gets quite excited towards the end, and she really gets into the flow of this, I think, because on this particular segment, we managed to really make it truly conversational with good flow. So let's listen into that. What if it was really small? What if it was really big? Like really big, like the size of a house, right?
If it was the size of a house, you could all your things in it, and it was a tiny, tiny, tiny cup, then you could use it to like if you're making something like a person, you can use it as the person's head.
Right, like a little Lego man or a woman, if it was tiny.
Yeah, like a Lego piece.
So you'd have to draw somebody's face on the side of it,
Yeah.
eyes and nose. Okay. Could you draw on it anyway if it was a normal size cup?
Yeah, then it would be really big. Wait, it was the size of your head. You could do an eyes and a mouth on it and then put it over your head.
So there, Aziza really getting into the prompting questions within, also about the size of the cup, varying that, I think helped. But then she started talking about masks and sort of faces, and I sort of joined in, didn't I? And go, oh, you could also kind of just mark up a normal cup, and then she got really excited. So that segment had really good flow to it, I think, and you could hear her getting excited, and honestly, I have to say that my experience of having these conversations with different children is that they really seem to enjoy it. I'm going to play you just one final clip here, which is what 9-year-old Bobby said at the end of asking him a few of these questions, where I was essentially asking him for feedback. How have you found this experience?
Really good. It's a lot of fun to do with you.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Tell me why is it fun? It can't be as fun as playing video games, can it?
It's something like that. Almost the same.
Really? Wow.
It's interesting to do.
Yeah, tell me more. Why is it interesting?
Because all the different questions I haven't heard before, some of them, and you would think not many people would ask you that. There might be different questions that people ask you. It's cool how you found them.
Right. Do you like being asked these different sorts of questions?
Yeah.
What happens in your brain when I ask you these questions?
It like switch it on.
So there you have it. Bobby enjoys these conversations as much as he enjoys playing video games, and he finds his brain gets switched on when he's asked them. So look, there's just some talking tips from the podcast I created, KidCoach Conversations, and I hope that helped give some really practical examples of how to take conversations deeper for parents at home. But, just coming back to the first of their struggles, right? Well, what conversations do I have in the first place? What's the inspiration? What inspiration can I have? And, out there on the World Wide Web, there's plenty of sort of, questions to ask kids, kind of blog posts, and create big sort of lists of would you rather questions, and dinner table starters and things like that, which is all great. Like one thing I do want to mention is that we've curated some of this into an app, a KidCoach app, where we sort of write hundreds of questions like this and more published every month. But with a twist, right? So firstly, they're organized by lots of different skill areas, 12 that we cover at the moment across the social, cognitive, and emotional spaces, which is also used by the Voice 21 framework I've got pasted in here. We call it sort of talking, thinking, and feeling. So under talking, you have things like communication and leadership. Under thinking, you have things like critical thinking and philosophy. Under feeling, you have things like empathy and confidence, resilience. There's 12 skills like that. So parents can easily find the skill area that they want to particularly develop. And the app, in fact, recommends areas as well. But also there are all sorts of sort of prompting questions within. And actually, I'll show you in a moment. Well, I'll show you now actually how these prompts are also scaffolded, right? So within any of these questions, like this example that we heard Aziza talk about, what are 10 different things you could use a cup for? It's all well and good having the headline question, but those prompts are so important, aren't they, as we've seen, to keep the conversation going and having the learnings go deep. And so the prompts that we've made are deliberately scaffolded. This is some feedback and advice we got from various teachers we've been working with. And so what I mean by that is that the first prompt is always a statement that turns into a question. So, if a child is particularly stuck, if you hear the, I don't know, response, which is fairly common, to be fair, then you could just nudge them in gradually on that bottom rung of the scaffold. So you could start with a statement of, well, look, if the cup was upside down, it could be a drum. So that gets them thinking about putting the cup upside down, and then following up with, well, so what else could you do with it if it was upside down? So every prompt is, all the prompts are scaffolded like this. And as we've been testing with parents, that makes, it gives a parent the best chance to have a meaningful conversation that still only needs to take 5 or 10 minutes, but it helps them sort of get beyond that headline question, which is on the surface quite interesting, but sometimes you do need prompts to make it go deep. So I'm going to wrap up now. And in summary, what we've talked about is that parents are in a really good position at home to supplement the work of schools in building Oracy and other essential skills alongside it. The thing is that they just need a little bit of inspiration and guidance, don't they? You know, inspiration on, well, what questions do I ask, and how can I take the conversation a little bit deeper? And as you heard from Bobby and the other kids, you know, children love it when parents make the time for this, and it's actually a brilliant bonding experience at home. The parents we work with, in particular, love to use it around the dinner table for a dinner table chat. So look, if this is something that is resonating with you as a teacher, and you'd like to support this Oracy development at home, then there's sort of 3 things that I would particularly recommend. You know, you could ask your parents to, first of all, subscribe to the podcast, KidCoach Conversations, in your usual podcast player, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere. And what they'll get is a whole bunch of conversations and a new conversation added every week, totally free, where they not only kind of hear some interesting questions, but more importantly, they hear some real examples of how do I take the conversation deeper? What are some of the nudges I can use? What are some of the tips I can apply? They could even listen to it with their child and then sort of have a discussion afterwards, couldn't they? About, well, how would you respond to this question? What do you think you could do with a cup, for instance? So that's the first thing. The second thing is there's lots of good stuff on our website, kidcoach.app, or just search KidCoach app. And there's a very simple sign up form there. And so we send parents every week regular questions and talk tips straight to the inbox. Again, totally free. So you might want to encourage them to sign up on our website just to sort of stay in the loop with the latest questions here. But finally, you know, we have this app as well, and I'll show you a sort of a 1-minute demo video of this app to kind of give you more sense of what's in it, which is right at the end. But essentially, we can get your parents the app at a discounted price if you would like. But you just need to ask me for some promo codes, and it's something that essentially we can work out with your school. So if you like the idea of sort of putting the app in the hands of the parents, because in practice that will help them have these conversations more and better, then just, you know, connect with me on Twitter at Kavinwadar, KAVINWADHAR at Kavinwadar, or you can email the team here at hello@kidcoach.app, hello@kidcoach.app. So those are the 3 steps I recommend. Ask your parents to subscribe to the podcast, KidCoach Conversations. Encourage them to sign up on our website, kidcoach.app. Both those things are completely free. And also, you know, let's you and I discuss about getting your parents the app at a reduced price. And by the way, even when the price is not reduced, it's incredibly affordable. It's, you know, it's the price of like a coffee or 2 a month. You know, so instead of going to Starbucks once or twice a month, it's about investing in this app for their children. So, you know, deliberately very affordable. So that's it. Thanks very much for your time. You know, do follow me on Twitter to keep the conversation going, at Kavinwadar or Kavin@KidCoach. I'll be around during the conference to field any questions, or if you just want to ask me anything, you know, I'll be around. I'd love to hear some feedback, what you think of this talk, how you think we can, you know, support parents at home to develop Oracy skills to supplement the great learnings at school. And any feedback and ideas, I'm always really open to, because, you know, we're always learning and improving and developing, right? So thanks very much for your time. I will leave you with this 1-minute demo video of the KidCoach app, so you get a really good sense of what it is. So enjoy, and you know, I hope we all have great conversations with our children today.